Hello and welcome to Beginning Game and App Development. This is week 4 of the app LOOC, hashtag app LOOC. I'm coming at you here from my home, so hence the unshelved look, the hair. I guess I'm trying to look the part of a game developer, independent game developer at least, a guy who's been on a train for hours and hours making games. That's right, I just came back from the Game Developer Conference where I actually took part in something a little bit crazy. I took part in a game jam, all on board a train, going to San Francisco, and I actually made some games. So if you actually want to play your instructor's crazy games, you can go to trainjam.com. I worked on Warcry 3. I also worked a little bit on Waiting for Ganondorf. Not credited on this, but I helped with the brainstorming session. Warcry 3 is the main game I worked on, which was the best first-person shooter ever. And that's all obviously tongue-in-cheek. It's actually a really awful game. It's made with the thought of how annoying it is to apply DRM patches to games that you just bought. And so the idea is you get to play it for about 5 minutes, the thing crashes, and then you have to play all these annoying mini-games in the style of Wario, where if you finish the mini-games, then you get to play for, every once in a while, you get to play for another 5 minutes, and then the thing just crashes again. It's just a tongue-in-cheek joke game, pretty much. But I would encourage you to check it out. GDC in general was a really good time, and I got to meet a lot of fellow game developers, including some, not only these independent game developers, but some guys from Gone Home, another group of independent developers. I really recommend the game Gone Home if you're looking for a non-traditional game. I also got to hang out with some of the guys from BioShock Infinite and talk to them about how they made their AI in Elizabeth. That was really cool. And I got to talk to some guys from Mojang, and I got to talk to some guys from 2K and some guys from Nihilistic, and as well as studios I've been at like Raven and Activision and things like that. So it was a great chance to rub elbows. If you're interested in things like Train Jam, continue your education, continue making games, because there are game jams like this that go on all over the place. You don't have to take a train and be crazy like I did. You can take part in something like the Global Game Jam, for example, which has game development locations, game jam locations all over the world. For example, in 2014, when they ran this in January, they had 23,000 jammers registered in 488 jam sites in 72 countries. So that's pretty impressive. For example, I wonder if we look at just United States, for example, and we look at city, I'm going to put Madison, because that's probably the closest hub to where we're at right now. I get the Madison Global Game Jam, which happened on December 16th, it looks like. I think there was one actually in Stevens Point as well. That might be the closest one to us. Yeah, UW Stevens Point Game Ops registered on December 30th. Don't think there's anything in Green Bay yet. Maybe we can together work to change that as you guys, excel at making games. We can always start making some of those. I think there's probably one in Milwaukee. Anyway, these are jams that go on all over the country. Any town in the U.S. that's a major city, and I would be willing to bet that there's some going on. I bet Chicago probably has more than one. Yeah, there's 4 in Chicago. So yeah, that is what a game jam is all about. You get together with your fellow developers, and over a course of time, you make a game. We made some really awful games. We made some really good games. We were just kind of screwing around. It's a chance to make games for the sake of making games for art and not really care much about what the retail market thinks about it. So I had a great time doing that, and I'm back with you now for week 4. And week 4 is all about arrays. For one, the second thing it's about is inheritance, and then there's a third and fourth thing that it's about. It is about game design, and it is about the game development process. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to get back. So I've got 2 videos for you that get into the game design process as well as game design balance and things like that. And then I've also got additional content for you that will be covering the shooter. We're going to get back to the shooter. We're going to talk about the design of the shooter and get back into coding up the shooter. And again, I apologize for my disheveled look. I'm trying to look the part of a game developer here, I suppose, recording this from home. Going on not very much sleep. It's about 11:24 at night on Tuesday night, believe it or not. So, but this stuff is old hat to me. I am presenting game design and game development process today, something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm also going to be showing you some documents that I've gotten permission from Radical Entertainment to show you. These are for educational purposes only. If you end up working on games professionally, you'll need to generate your own high concept documents. But for now, for this class, we can use these. So let's get right to it. The game development process is the first topic we're going to talk about, and then I'll have a second video that talks about game design specifically. So, game development process. Typical development cycle works like this. This is for all software development, but also specifically for games. This is a little bit different than typical software development, but it has most of the same elements as software development in that you create an idea, you get the design together, you code it, you test it, and you release it. Our cycle for games has a little bit of a different flavor to it in that the idea generation stage and the proposal generation stage can kind of go hand in hand. I mean, you've got tons of different ideas. Eventually, one of those ideas is going to lead to a proposal, hence the nice little animation here. So some idea is going to happen. You can imagine a ton of different ideas. One of those ideas is going to lead to a proposal. That proposal might lead to a design, and eventually that design is going to get evaluated by someone such as your executive producers, your publishers, and that will eventually get to coding, eventually to testing, and then finally to release. So we're going to go over all of those. So if that seemed kind of fast to you, no worries. We're going to go back over each one of those in turn. So the dev process starts with the game idea. You might have an idea for a game like, I want to make a side scroller about a frog that's trying to become a king, and he goes through this level and he jumps on top of things, and every time he encounters a squid, he has to fight the squid and bite its legs off and, take its legs and throw it at, the next squid in line and use those as weapons. Or I don't know. I'm just kind of going off about random stuff. It sounds like a pretty awful game to me, but you get the idea. You just come up with these ideas. Could be from anywhere. A lot of times game ideas are inspired by things that we see in real life. They might be inspired by games that we've played, games that we want to play but haven't played yet, games that we want to create sort of like might be two different games that we really love but no one's ever created, kind of like a mashup of those games, so you end up with kind of like hybrid games. And I think that that's a whole topic in and of itself, is how do you create ideas for games? I've been thinking about music games lately because for whatever reason I attended a talk at GDC at the Game Developer Conference, and this guy that gave the talk was really passionate about music, and he got me thinking about how could we make a beat-based game that would be a lot of fun. So I've got those ideas in my head, but I've got other ideas, and everyone's got ideas, and eventually what happens is that becomes some kind of a proposal. The proposal is also called the high concept document. This is probably one of the most crucial documents and crucial stages of a game idea, because it's that proposal that's going to become like your elevator pitch. That pitch is going to be really important because you take that to people that you want to sell your idea to, people that you want to get excited about your idea. And eventually that's going to become a full-fledged game design document. If people kind of like it, if you get funding for it, one of the first things you want to do is make a game design document for it. Some people go ahead and make the game design document even before they get funding, or they might actually be independent developers or amateur or hobbyist developers that sort of just are doing this without any money, and they just go ahead and make the game design document. So in that case, really the game proposal document for them, for independents, is more about getting people invested in your idea. Getting people really excited to create something with you. So, if you've got an idea for a game, it's all well and good for you to have that idea, and you might be really passionate about it. But the question is, how do you get other people to be passionate about it? The answer lies in you get them motivated. You get them interested in your idea to the point where they're as passionate as you are about your idea. And the question is, how do you do that? How do you sort of go from just an idea in your mind, and it could be the best idea in your mind, to putting that idea in someone else's mind, having be equally as awesome to them. That's sort of what designers struggle with on a daily basis. And the proposal document is all about that. And eventually, that proposal is going to be accepted by your peers or your supervisors or what have you, and that's going to become a game design document in and of its own right. Usually the game proposal doc is smaller, kind of just a hit list of things that you want in this game, and then the game design doc itself is a very long document. And I'm going to be showing some examples later in this lecture of these types of documents. So the Game Design Bible includes everything. It includes the story, the gameplay, the interface. You go into like the backstory, stuff that you might not even actually play in the game, but like you're going to want everything in there. The characters' backstories, how they are related to each other, what the story of the game is like. So I went on about some story about a frog that's trying to become a king. I think I don't know, some really bad example. So that frog would have a backstory. It would the villains in that game would have a story. The gameplay, like in this case, it was a side scroller, so it would have involved jumping. It would have involved fighting. It would have involved pushing buttons on the control pad. And I want you guys to think about everything in terms of gameplay. I want you to think about in terms of how that controller actually feels in your hands. So when you're holding that controller, I had to pause for a sec to get my trusty old Xbox 360 controller. So anyway, when you're holding that controller, what keys are you pressing to jump? What keys are you pressing to move left and right? What keys are you pressing to hit? All of that seems really obvious, I think, at first to first-time game designers, but you have to document it all, and you have to think about what buttons are going to be easiest for the person to press. If they have to climb, if they have to duck, if they have to place objects, anything that they have to do, you have to think about how that's going to work with the controller. And we have rules for well-controlled games. And by that, what I mean is one of the rules on the Radical Entertainment team was every action or every button push on the controller should have an immediate and obvious effect in the game. So for example, when we were doing the Hulk game or when we were doing the prototype game, if you press jump, you should actually see the character jump. If you press sprint, you should see the character sprint right away. If you press a button and nothing happens, you're sort of failing as a game designer. And I want you to think about gameplay from the sense of what the controller feels like in your hands. And that goes for PC games as well. If you're playing a sort of a Minecraft-inspired game, for example, or something like that, where you've got the WASD typical controls of looking around the world with the mouse and moving around with the keyboard, how does that feel? How does it feel to click on items in the world and have those items either destroyed or moved or what have you? Think about things from the perspective of what that controller is like, and that's the gameplay. That also gets into what the interface is all about. So that interface is so important for game design. And that should be your first and primary focus, is what the gameplay feels like. Story is important as well, and especially in some games. I mentioned Gone Home before. Bioshock Infinite also I mentioned. Some of these games have incredible stories, and it's very important. But, I think that gameplay usually comes first, even in those games, and then the story is layered on top of it. So the Art Bible is another game design element that's extremely important. For the Art Bible, what you want to concentrate on is what your art looks like whether it's a realistic style, whether it's a science fiction style, is it toon shaded, what kind of shaders it's using, what kind of lighting model it's using. All of that goes into the Art Bible. As a programmer, my typical experience is in the Software Bible, which is also called the Technical Design Document. The Technical Design Document is the document that's used to create the systems and label the systems, as well as create the designs for the systems that are being used. So, for example, in our free roam games at Radical Entertainment for Prototype or what have you, we would often code up, or we would write up the systems involved, for example, in the traffic, like how the traffic moves about the world, how the AI moves about the world, how often they stop at corners, what their areas of interest are as they're walking around the world. Everything that is a system needs to be described in the Software Bible, which is the Technical Design Document. After you get all that design done, you can go into evaluation stage. Your evaluation stage is usually done by executive producers, or perhaps if you're an indie developer, by members of your team. That evaluation stage leads to eventual development. Once you've decided your game design is good enough and you've got everything accounted for, you can then move into development. Of course, development involves coding and debugging, which is what we've been focusing a lot in this course, because this is a programming course. We're talking about some design elements and we're talking about some game development elements here, but first and foremost, this is a coding course, so that's what we'll be doing for the most part. Once you're done coding and debugging, and in fact, as you're doing that, you can test, and then eventually you will go to release. You might go to an alpha release first and then a beta release, but eventually you will go to release. So in the typical dev cycle where you do one thing after another, we call that waterfall-based development. So we go from the idea to the proposal, but the thing about it is you can also go back to the proposal after the design is partially finished. So you can go to the proposal, go to the design, and back again. And it's still waterfall in the sense that it's still going downwards, but it's spiraling up on itself. It's iterating inside of this sort of chain here. It's going from design to evaluation, back to design, because maybe someone during the evaluation period found that there was part of the design they didn't like, there was a jump mechanic that wasn't perfect or something like that, and it goes back to design. Another common methodology used in game development is spiral. In the spiral development methodology, we start out at the middle and we design, and then we start coding, then we test it, then we do a release. We evaluate it at that stage and decide what we should add to the design. And then we start coding it again, testing it, then we evaluate it again. And we keep doing that over and over again until the game is finished. Another way of looking at it is evolutionary prototyping. In evolutionary prototyping, you start with the proposal, then you go into the design and initial prototype, and then you will refine and iterate over that prototype until it's acceptable, and then you'll eventually release it. So this looks like a big mess inside the refining and prototyping until accepted, and that's on purpose because there's a lot of backtracking in here, going back over things, and this is sort of agile in the sense that you will be refining that prototype, you'll be refining that design, and you'll eventually agree upon something that should be released. In the games I've been on, we've used this quite a bit. We've used what's called the agile methodology. Agile basically believes in iteration on a concept as well as improvement on that concept continually. So for example, I quite often reference the Hulk game. You might be wondering why I reference that, even though I was on a game such as Batman Arkham Origins. And I've been on many games since Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Hulk actually had the best rated superhero video game of all time title until Arkham Asylum took it out. So it's currently the second best rated superhero title of all time, right behind Arkham Asylum for consoles. And it was a very successful project with very little crunch time. We kind of had a life as developers, which is quite often something you don't get. So I referenced that product quite a bit because I think it was a great success. And there's definite similarities between that and very modern game development such as Batman Arkham Origins that have direct correlations. In evolutionary prototyping on Hulk Ultimate Destruction, for example, we had an initial prototype. This was right around the stage that I joined the project. When we had an initial prototype that we had just finished, I kind of helped make that final initial prototype. And we had some AI running around in the game that you could fight. You could also just kind of do everything you could do as Hulk. Then we took that and we started to refine it and add to it. We would add one level after another, one mission after another. And we would make sure that those missions were great before we continued on to the next mission. That is what we mean by refining that prototype until each one of those aspects is acceptable. Finally, when we had a full game, we then went to release. Another way of looking at evolutionary prototyping might be the original Half-Life saga, and basically everything Valve does, right up through and including Portal 2. Portal 2, Half-Life, all of these games that they've done, Half-Life 2, Portal 1, all of these games, basically they do what's called a gray box. So they sketch out a level, and that level, they sketch out where like the hide points, for example, are going to be, where the choke points are going to be, where the enemies are going to come in. All of that is going to be done at a gray box level, so it might be very, very ugly, but it will serve a purpose in the sense that all the enemies, you'll know where they're going to be. You get to play it in sort of a gray world without any art in it at first. And the designers get to think, does this actually have the potential for being fun? And if it is fun, then they start adding the art. Then they start refining over all the aspects of the level that make it a full Half-Life 2 type game. If it's not fun, they just throw it out and they start over again. And that's really another way of doing evolutionary prototyping. Another way that, unfortunately, I'm accustomed to is called design to schedule. So we had the unfortunate honor at Frozen Codebase talk about, it's always good to talk about your failures as well as your successes in life, I think. And one of my big successes was Hulk Ultimate Destruction. One of my big failures was the Kick-Ass video game for PlayStation Network. Kick-Ass was a movie that came out, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago now. And we were hired to develop a video game in 4 short months. 4 months is not a long time at all to make any kind of console game, even if it is just on PSN, PlayStation Network, that is. We knew this, but we needed money. And so we took the project. In contrast, something like Prototype or Batman Arkham Origins, these things take like 2 years, not 4 months. So we took the game, and what we had to do was we had to do what's called design to schedule. So we knew there was a certain point in time which we would run out of money. And we tried to put as many features as we could in before we ran out of money. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough in for that to be a truly great game. It passed code, meaning that it passed through the technical requirements at Sony in order for it to launch on the system, because it's still difficult to even make a bad game. It's difficult to make even a crappy game. We did our job, we got paid, and we did the best we could with a short amount of time. A lot of products are made designed to schedule, especially movie-based products. That's an example of a movie-based product. Hulk actually was not a movie-based product. Prototype wasn't a movie-based product. Arkham Origins wasn't a movie-based product. So maybe you can see the direction this is going. I'm kind of hypothesizing that pretty much all movie-based games are going to suck. Chronicles of Riddick on the PS2 might be one shining example of a movie-based game which was not awful. I guess maybe the Spider-Man games, those are kind of movie tie-in games, but also kind of not. I know some guys at Marvel, and I kind of know how they worked with their licensees, and they kind of treated that as not really a movie tie-in game, even though it was. So Spider-Man probably takes the cake for the best movie tie-in type game. Feel free to discuss further on the discussion board what you think is the best movie-based tie-in game. I guess I would venture to argue like the Spider-Man 2 for, I guess that was PlayStation 2. That might be maybe the best. I don't know if anything's come out since then. Most stuff I've heard of since then just isn't very good. They've got plenty of good video game tie-ins to shows. I've heard great things, and I played a little bit of the new South Park game. So there are some examples of things that have succeeded, but for the most part, what you end up doing is you end up designing to schedule, because you'll have to do a movie tie-in release at a certain time, and you're going to run out of time and money. So to do that, you basically figure out what the highest priority code is to fix, then you do the medium, then notice here we're never getting to the low priority stuff. We're only doing the high priority, the medium to high priority, and the medium priority, and then eventually we're going to release. We skip all this stuff. This could be stuff like collision bugs, for example. This could be stuff like, some AI that's shooting you through a wall. We had that on Kick-Ass, and I'd venture to guess that every game that's ever been sort of on a design to schedule basis has had this. So normally you don't want to be in this kind of a situation. Normally you want to be more in this evolutionary prototyping situation where you have the flexibility to keep refining until it's an acceptable quality level, which is what we had on some of the best games I've been on. So getting back to the game development documents themselves, we're going to shortly here go into a concept document and a high concept document that was authorized by Radical Entertainment for me to show you guys. And that is basically the proposal document. It's also called a high concept document. In further lectures, we're going to get into the game specs, the design document itself. I'm going to actually show you a sample design document today, but I'm going to have another lecture that hopefully shows the Hulk design document. I'm waiting on permission to show that. So I'm not going to get too in-depth on the design document today. Eventually, I might also show things like the story Bible, the art Bible, storyboards. As I said, the technical design document is really just a blueprint of the tech, so that's also very important. Schedules, business marketing documents are extremely important. Those are basically tasking documents that lay out all the tasks for your developers to do from start to finish. So, starting over here, you're going to have things like getting the basic game up and running, getting the character model in, getting the controller model working, getting the first level working. All of these are going to be sort of tasked out in a spreadsheet format or in Microsoft Project format. And that's what it means by the schedules of business and marketing documents. Marketing documents also comes into play near the end of the product life cycle where you're actually getting ready to launch. So, as I said, the point of this talk really is to get into the concept document, which is to sell the game, to create the framework for the design. This is usually going to be about 10 pages or less. You'll probably include some sort of concept art in there. It can be written by a bunch of people, but it usually needs leadership. And I guess I would ask you in a quiz maybe, why would I say it needs leadership? Why would a game design document in the form of a high concept, why would that need leadership? Well, the answer is pretty simple. You need a concise vision in order to create a successful game. And that vision, sometimes concise visions come best when they come from one person, because that person has everything in his or her mind and can concisely write it down into one sort of clear document that captures that design. When you have things written by a committee, everyone's going to have different ideas for what the vision is. If those differing ideas make their way into the high concept document, the high concept document could end up looking kind of scattered, not concise, and it could lead people that are potential investors in your game, whether it's investors from a monetary sense or investors just from a sense of passion. They might not get as passionate about your game if it seems kind of disjumbled. What if you have two people on your team, one who's really into RTSs, one who's really into first-person shooters, and the guy that's into RTSs is trying to make a first-person shooter into an RTS, and it really shouldn't be, because the game design document, the high concept doc, calls out that it's going to be in first-person mode, but Eddie's got chip on his shoulder that, no, we've got to have real-time strategy in here for some reason. And that could end up making its way into the high concept doc. So usually you need that leadership in order to say, no, this isn't part of the vision. On Hulk Ultimate Destruction, we actually had a we actually had a series of cards which read epic boss battles, ultimate destruction, go anywhere, the world is your weapon. Each of these was a central tenet of the design for Hulk. And if a concept did not fit within one of these categories, it didn't belong. So, for example, you guys know the character Bruce Banner from the comics. Bruce Banner is this kind of wimpy scientist guy. Does he fit anywhere in these? Is Bruce Banner part of epic boss battles? Not really. Is he part of ultimate destruction of things? Well, not really, I guess, unless he's got like a bomb or something. Can he go anywhere? Well, certainly not. I mean, he can't just run up the side of a building like Hulk can. Can he use things in the world as weapons? Like Hulk can use, rip off like a turret from a tank, stick it on his hand, and use it as a club? Bruce Banner can't do that. So we basically decided, nope, we are going to get rid of good old Bruce Banner, and he is going to be gone. Apparently, I cannot do the cross-out thing here, so I'm just going to kill it. So Bruce Banner gone in Hulk Ultimate Destruction. We had a guy who actually wanted a Bruce Banner love story. He pitched it to us early on in the Hulk Ultimate Destruction life cycle, and we said, okay, well, first off, Bruce Banner's already gone. Even if he wasn't, love story doesn't really fit any of these themes. We never hired the guy again. It was just some writer that was trying to get work, and he wanted it to be like if Hulk fell in love, he would be less likely to destroy a whole bunch of stuff. Totally did not fit at all the game design that we had in mind. And so, no, we did not do that. So you're starting to get the idea, hopefully. Basically, if you have leadership, you can do things like create these 4 central pillars of game design and make sure that the leadership knows how to manage that. Once you have that all in place, once you've sort of gotten all the wrinkles out of the game design document, you can use that as a springboard for further documents and further blueprints and plans. Coming from that, we do the game spec or concept document. Here we list out the overview of the game, the players, the look and feel of the game, the interface, how it starts up, what the objectives are. And we're going to get into all of this in future lectures. I'm kind of running long on time now, so I'm not going to get into all the exact details of this game spec. But the game spec ends up being an early start to the design document where you list out all the features, all the entities, all the rules, the gameplay, the level design, technical requirements, and marketing. And then that leads into the design doc, which can end up being a quite large document, 100 plus pages. Hulk's was actually 340, I think. Batman Arkham Origins was insanely huge. It was like 600 pages. Arkham Origins was massive. It was a project worked on by like 300 people, and it was, it's a modern game on, late generation Xbox 360, PS3, so it contained a lot of content. These things are living documents, most importantly. Because we're constantly evolving and iterating over concepts, we're always adding things to the design doc that we might have come up with late in the game. One example I always use for the design doc enhancements of Hulk Ultimate Destruction would be the ability of Hulk to take a car, smash it, turn it into a surfboard, and ride it around town. That was something added at like 2 a.m. by one of our programmers. They thought it would be really cool to do it, and as a challenge, he just challenged himself to do it. Ended up making it into the design doc after the fact, and it was a really great addition to the game. So we're going to go over the rest of this in a different talk, but basically a design document construct is the table of contents, introduction, the game mechanics, AI, game elements, story overview, and game progression. We will start here next time. And this is the rest of the stuff we will go over, but basically What I wanted to show you in terms of the high concept doc is up on my screen here. I just need to bring that up. As I said, we're getting low on time here, so I'm going to end it with a high concept doc, and then next talk I'm going to start talking about the design document itself. This is a high concept document for a game called Zombie Wrangler. This was the original high concept document which won the pitch from the publisher Sierra Online. This was a frozen code-based concept created by Frozen Codebase, the company I started here in Green Bay. And it is available now on the Xbox 360. You can go and buy it and play it. This was some concept art we created, kind of a logo. We create a little bit of concept art here. And we just go over the various concept issues. World taken over by zombies. This was kind of before the massive zombie outpouring, even before Plants vs. Zombies, actually. And we wanted a game that kind of catered to the idea of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which was a classic SNES game back in the day. So basically, you use your zombie wrangler skills, you clean up the town, you capture zombies and you deposit them. So it's not a game about killing zombies, it's a game about capturing them very quickly. Catch, not kill. So these were the pillars of the game. Fast-paced action, upgradability for your vehicles as well as your gun attachments. Catch, not kill, a unique art style. So think Tim Burton, for example. And then we've got a Hungry Hungry Hippos reference here, as well as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. We go through a license treatment. We go through a target audience treatment, as well as the various competitors. We have an art concept included inside the high concept. And then expanded game concept that gets into the specifics of the game. So I'll let you read through all this on your own time. But this, I'm not going to post this online, but since it's in video format, you can kind of like pause this and read through. Here's the backstories, as I mentioned, backstories of all the characters. Even though you don't ever really come to know all of this, for example, about Uju or Monica or Dean, we provided that anyway, just as sort of an inspiration. Here's the enemies that you're going to encounter. Here's some other concept art. I think this is one of the ones that sold it really well as this main character, Uju. Here's the gameplay. This is the zombie sucking device. Neighborhood Madness mode, Team Skirmish mode. Some of the stuff ended up making it in the final product, some didn't. So that is all a working high concept doc, and ended up being 12 pages long. Your shooter documents are going to be similar to that. You're going to basically document a similar kind of in a similar style as an assignment. You're going to document the shooter that we're about to make, and in order to do that, we've got some high concept doc templates here that you can make use of. So I'm going to provide these two things for you to download. We use the same kind of high concept template at Frozen Codebase as Radical used, where we basically go through a game analysis, so it's an introduction to the game, 2 to 3 sentences that state the concept of the game, the goals of the game. Think of these similar to the ones that I mentioned in Hulk, where you have the sort of pillars of the game, the genre the game is, the license or branding elements that are in the game, who it's aimed for, what the comparator's analysis is. Then we get into the expanded game design. Here's where you would get into the gameplay itself. You'd also want to provide a walkthrough, like we did, of the gameplay experience. These are 2 to 3 paragraphs that detail the gameplay experience. So in Zombie Wranglers, for example, the gameplay experience is, once the player has chosen his character and vehicle, they will then select a level. Level starts on a street of a suburb. You have 2 minutes to catch 35 zombies. Game starts with the zombies coming out of zombie containment trucks that fell over start mopping up. You will have other objectives to do as bonuses. Completing this will give you points to buy upgrades and more voodoo powers. So that just explains a little bit of gameplay. There's a little more in the expanded section. Here we say you are presented with a goal, 3 minutes to catch 25 zombies. Other objectives that will be returned are stop them from getting into the Little League Baseball diamond, destroy 12 toxic canisters, pick up 8 competitors' advertisements, and close the 4 sewer lids so you can catch as many zombies as possible. So that's sort of what we're looking at for expanded gameplay as well as gameplay. And then there's the back of the box features, part number 3, as well as finally a summary. I am also going to be providing a high concept summary document, which is a primer, high concept primer document. And this document will help guide you through the creation of the high concept document. For the purposes of the shooter, we're going to be very much, I don't have my camera on anymore, I guess I don't really need it. For the purposes of the shooter, we're going to be very much directing you guys towards what kind of a high concept we want you to make. And you're going to be kind of just filling in the blanks. I'm going to have some of the high concept filled out already for you, just so you get a sense of what the game is that we're actually creating in this side-scrolling shooter. It's kind of like a shoot 'em up, I guess, if you want to call it that, like a space shoot 'em up. So we're going to, and we're going to make that an X and A. So we're going to talk about that later on in further videos, but for now you can kind of read through the high concept document primer, and that'll tell you how to make an actual high concept document, as well as I'll probably help you out some more along the way as you make these things. So that is it for the first video. In the second video, we'll continue talking about the game design document itself, as well as a little bit about game design and game balance.